obviously no one has asked for, but I've brought anyway.
I want to know what they are.
Well, you have smashed a record by appearing today, so...
This is exciting.
Yeah.
I want to know what the record is.
You've got to hold on, haven't you? Lee, you're a bit of a tease, aren't you, really, Lee?
Am I?
Well, with your this is coming up. I'm going to reveal something very shortly.
I can tell you, it's not a problem. It was whether you wanted the
sorry.
underwhelming surprise live on the podcast.
Let me rephrase it. I'm a tease, and I don't think we should tell people.
All right, fair enough.
Right, who is joining us? Running Dak is very, very pleased to see you, Nicole. We've got a woo with 3 exclamation marks.
Where's that?
And 4 after Nicole is back. I mean,
yeah.
I should admit I don't have the Discord open, so you do have to read it to me.
Ian Clark is showing some real historical knowledge. He says, Nicole, it must be a smaller phone on the menu for Hot Harder of the Week.
Haha, yes.
Yes, well, so I'll just transcribe what people are saying. So my dad is saying to you, hi, Nicole.
Aw, hi.
And David Artis says it's good to see Nicole joining us, but slightly more understated. There's no exclamation marks from David.
No punctuation. Oh, there's an apostrophe, but yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole podcast is just going to be like this. We're just going to read out what
we're just going to
Hi.
transcribe. That's what we do
Hi.
now. So just to temper people's expectations, Nicole's only going to be joining us for the first half.
Because that's tradition. Then you boot me off and I don't know. Say
That's first half.
Always used to say when we went down the pub,
very
and how
big
did that
bug.
end up?
No comment.
Drunk, I think was the answer.
If we were doing the proper thing, Nicole would go out and Jonathan Bray would be wheeled in. I think that's how it used to work.
Yes.
Oh, I miss John.
He works for Expert Reviews now, of course. He hasn't changed much in the sense that I've been waiting since Monday for him to reply to a Slack message I sent him. So.
He's probably on holiday though, isn't he? This is peak holiday time.
No, he's just got back from Japan actually, so he's
of
probably
course he has. Yeah.
dealing with a backlog of stuff.
So you've been walking in Japan recently?
Don't get it. Sorry.
No, I don't get it either.
No, on Strava. We follow each other on Strava. So
right, okay, right.
Oh, I see. It
So
wasn't some
actually
sort
seen
of
him walking
obscure
in
David
Japan.
Bowie reference.
Yeah, I thought it was.
No.
It's literally just he has been walking in Japan.
See, I'm confused
Oh,
already.
Me too. I wish I hadn't said anything.
So
willing
Lee
to
is
spend-
mildly obsessed with David Bowie.
Mildly.
To the point where we've actually, do you know what? It's Barry's idea, this feature, but Lee's written a feature in the next issue of PC Pro. Actually got postponed for an issue. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah, I noticed that, so I apologise for invoicing you ahead of time. I won't double invoice.
Well, that's good. About Bowie Net.
Invoice? What is this? Oh, okay.
It's what you do, John, in 6 monthly periods.
Yeah,
What
I
we call
realise
it.
I've screwed up and I send you a bunch of invoices. I know.
Yeah. Now, Dan's
bad.
very regular invoicer, as is Lee. Nicole's quite sporadic.
Did I invoice him? Do I need to invoice? Here's an invoice. Is this the wrong one? What day is today?
But you do put puppies on your invoice.
Yes.
So-
It's the same dog that I have been using as a freelancer since I left PC Pro.
Yeah.
It's not my dog. It's just Google image. I stole it.
Which is silly because you do have a dog.
I did have a dog.
Oh,
Get
yes,
into it.
sorry.
It's
you
very
did have a
sad.
dog.
Nick Gassman went to a 1970s glam rock show this week, and apparently the Life on Mars was sung like a cabaret show tune. It was awful. Well, Nick, maybe you shouldn't have gone to a 1970s glam rock concert. Just a thought.
All right, John. Well, we can do life lessons with John Honeyball.
We can,
as
yes.
the podcast.
Except
I'd
you need
watch
your
that.
credit card for that, or we'll do it on OnlyFans.
Ooh. Well, that's the tone lowered.
Is that possible?
So glad to be back, guys.
Oh, I see. I actually just had a mumble there from Jeff Campbell, who's on the other side of the room from me, but he's also on Discord. So if there's loud screaming noises, it's because we've thrown something at each other.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you were trying to. What were you going to persuade him of, John? There was
What?
something that you were going to show to Jeff.
1
Oh, I
o'clock.
showed him Vision Pro last night.
And did he like it?
Well, he didn't throw it across the room. He did say that some aspects of it were really excellent and agreed that it was kind of early days for it.
Okay.
But yeah, I had somebody else here last week, and he was actually speechless for 10 minutes after he took it off. Didn't know what to say.
All right.
He was
Talking
blown
of knowing
sideways.
not to
Oh,
say, it's
good
time
God.
for the podcast. Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It's 1 p.m. on the 8th of August 2024. I'm Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro. And who do I have with me today? No one other than Nicole Kobie.
Hi.
Hi, Nicole. Yeah, don't sound quite so unexcited. You're delighted to be back, aren't you?
Always.
Yay!
Yeah, and in no way back to plug her book. That's not true at all. Not plugging their book, just here out of a sense of moral duty, we have Lee Grant,
Good afternoon.
Darian Graham-Smith.
Hello. So when you say you've got no one other than Nicole Kobie, you've actually got us, so regular reprobates as well, I'm afraid.
So I was saying it is none other, as in the special guest is none other. So you're just not a special guest, Darian. You're a very regular, a stalwart of the PC Pro podcast.
I think you're special, Darian.
Oh, we all actually do think you're special, Darian. And the equally special John Honeyball.
I'm here for immoral support. I think that's probably more my style.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Lee, I think you should kick things off with some fun podcast facts about Nicole Kobie.
Okay, right, here we go. So today is a record-shattering day by Nicole gracing us with her presence, because it has been 276 episodes since she last appeared, which smashes the current record of 203 episodes held by John Honeyball. So, John, if you want to get this back, you've got to say goodbye to episode 981, which, according to my forecast, is Valentine's Day 2030. Nicole
Works for me. Can I go? Bye.
Au revoir, mate. Nicole last appeared on episode 432, the 5th of April 2018, where she covered. Can you remember, Nicole?
No.
No, of course you can't. Of course you can't. It's Cambridge Analytica.
Oh, wow.
And for completists, which is possibly just me, this is Nicole's 154th PC Pro podcast, cementing her position as 7th in the most frequent flyer in the show's history. And also, if you're wondering if you take 276 away from 704, it doesn't equal 432. That's because some PC Pro podcasts are specials which don't have numbers. So although today's podcast is 704, the actual number of PC Pro podcast is slightly higher. Thank you. Welcome, Nicole.
If you want to really get into the weeds of the trivia, I believe
No.
that I believe Nicole has been on more podcasts than your researchers represent. And do you know why?
Why?
Because
Oh,
she
not this.
reads the
Wow.
sponsor message at the end of some of the early ones.
Oh, no, I'm going to...
You've really upset Lee now, haven't you? Lee
And
is
do you
now
know? Do you know why that was? Because you needed a voice that standed out, that
Stood
stood
out.
out. Sorry.
Stand it out.
And being female, that makes me
Very
weird
exotic,
among
yes.
you lot.
Yes, but Lee is now in crisis. Right? You know, he needs to lie down in a darkened room with a lightly boiled aspirin, I think.
Lee's hair is in crisis today. I think that's safe to say.
Don't mention the hair. This is a source of almost divorce point between me and Mrs. Grant at the moment. It involves me
What?
going to a hairdresser's, and it's not happening at the moment. Sorry, no one needs to know this. Can we move on? Sorry.
Very relevant for an audio podcast, isn't
This
it?
is great, isn't it? This is gold. Why did we win awards?
It is
You wonder
quite
why it's been so
remarkable.
long.
Yeah. Okay, we are going to kick off with the main reason, frankly, that Nicole is here, and which is to talk about your book, Nicole.
Yeah.
What's it called?
I've got a copy of it here. It's called The Long History of the Future. Hey, nice one, John. Where's everyone else's? Come on. Come on.
Everyone else, put your copy up as well.
I've got the audiobook on pre-order, but that's not out till next week after.
Yeah, and guess who's done the audiobook?
I'm hoping
So
it's you.
Yeah, so if you're not sick of my voice yet.
Good. It's always
You
nice
will
when
be.
it's always nice when the author does the book. So I'm looking forward to that.
Fun fact. So I had negotiated with Nicole that she would come on to plug the book, well, actually on the launch date. But the organisers of the recording then decided that would be the time for her to be doing it. So that's why. Because it came out last month, didn't it, Nicole?
Yeah, but it turns out the publishing industry doesn't really work to timescales recognizable to people.
Well, like
So-
magazines.
Yeah, yeah.
No, magazines are actually they're pretty darn regular, John. If we missed our print slot, you wouldn't see me again, basically. Nicole, I'm going to do a brief rundown of the main topics of your book, and you can. So we've got driverless. So the long history of the future. Anyway, we should just say as a preamble, you are looking at all these technologies, and kind of where they are now, but also why perhaps they aren't as successful as they could be. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, so I originally pitched it as here's a bunch of tech things that don't exist, so are inherently all failures to date, and why that's happened, and why they might continue to be failures, or what would it would take to make them succeed. And nobody wanted that because publishers hate books about the future. So then I decided to write about the fun stuff, which is the history. So, driverless cars
Yeah.
from 50s and 60s and 70s, and they're much cooler than the ones now. So that was fun.
I think all cooler. All cars were cooler in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So they've become very boring now. It's being published by Bloomsbury, and it's out now at all reputable booksellers. Who are so it's 15 quid on Amazon. I noticed it's 19 quid on Waterstones. I've done my research.
Wow.
And
Are you price checking it?
Well, I did used to work at John Lewis, never knowingly undersold. And £9, I believe, as the Kindle version. I don't know how much the audiobook cost you, Lee.
I'm a subscriber, so I got it as a freebie.
Oh, yeah.
Cheapo.
Yeah.
Can I say I have bought a copy as I'm waving it here. I haven't had time to read it, but I have read the back cover, which is very good. And the immediate vibe I got, which hopefully Nicole will approve of, is Jerry Anderson of Thunderbirds fame had a well-known saying, which is the future was fantastic. And I think that's very apt for what Nicole's been covering here. All of these things that we were kind of promised that would happen and haven't happened. So it's as an ardent Jerry Anderson fan, this is very close to my heart.
Good.
Okay, so we've got 9 main topics, I would say. So we've got driverless cars, AI, robots, AR, cyborgs, and brain BCIs, brain
Computer
interfaces,
Yeah.
which is very close to the heart of PC Pro, because Clive Webster, going back many years, once wrote a news story that it said, what does it say? How to control your computer with your head and face.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And for some reason that stuck with us. And I think you even put a sneaky reference of that into the futures column, didn't you, Nicole?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's funny.
Yeah. And then Hyperloop and smart cities. And in fact, if you are a subscriber, then go to issue 359 just off the shelves, and you will find a very much shortened version of that chapter, but it'll give you a really good taste of the book, and you can decide whether to read it. Anyway, Nicole, I do have some questions for you. I did some preparation. How did you decide, first of all, why those were the topics that you would cover?
Oh, that's a good question. I just kind of made a list of all of the things that I wanted to talk about. Because I think things like driverless cars and Hyperloop and AI are just sort of like inherently interesting. And then I added a few other ones to get it up to a decent chapter count. I think originally I had like 13 chapters planned, but that was stupid. So yeah, so then cut it down a bit. Just kind of I just wanted to include all the technologies that that I'm just really tired of hearing about. Like, we have been hearing about some of these things the entire time I have been a technology journalist, and if I have to see another story about how we're going to get driverless cars on British roads next year, I mean, that story's been running like 7 years in a row now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And which of all of them was your favorite chapter?
Oh, either driverless cars or Hyperloops. Hyperloops because it meant I got to write about old trains. So got to go back and write about like Victorian era railway mania pneumatic systems, which are absolutely ridiculous and very, very fun. And driverless cars is just fun because there's good stories that came out of them.
Yeah, you are a proper train nerd, aren't you?
Yes.
Do you remember those pneumatic things they had in shops? I remember them in, was it Foyles in London, where the receipts were put into a tube and then it sort of sucked itself around the building. You don't see that anymore. I think technology is responsible for removing an awful lot of really fun stuff from our lives. And it
Yeah, I
made a
think-
really nice sort of sucking plop noise as it went. There you
You'd
go.
be amazed what you could get into the canisters for those and send them around the building to the accounts department. It was lots of fun.
Anyway, sorry, I
saying-
interrupted. So
No,
I'll shut
no, I
up
am
now.
quite interested. We will come back to this. But Lee, what exactly did you send in these canisters? And
Oh,
where
you know,
and why?
Pork pies, you can fill them with liquids. And there's lots of things that we definitely won't mention at lunchtime in public.
But that's why
Okay.
we don't have them anymore. You broke them.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Where were you, Lee, when you were sending these mysterious items?
I think for legal reasons we don't need to talk about this, Tim.
Okay, just look up Lee CV on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll be able to work it out.
certain establishments in Bradford that I think have probably shut down now.
Okay, all right. So, well, I was actually going to ask you, Nicole, about who was the person that you interviewed, who you found the most interesting.
Oh, there's a former student. So Ernst Dickmans was a driverless car. Wow, he kind of invented them in like the 90s and had them driving around Europe. I think they used like a little bit of AI, but it was mostly just like rules-based stuff, like don't hit the car in front of you, that sort of thing. And I spoke to one of his students whose name is Reinhold Beringer or something like that. Sorry. And he was just so excited to talk about the project. Like he has worked on driverless cars for his entire career. He is still an academic in the UK, and he had so much joy for the project. And it was just such a nice reminder of the fact that a lot of the engineers working on these projects are doing them just because it's really fun. And it's a super cool thing to spend your life doing, trying to make something happen. So even though we criticize it a lot, and I don't like all of the tech bros that are funding all of this stuff, the individual engineers that are working on it are wonderful people doing super cool things.
Yeah, and I think actually that was the most surprising chapter for me, is the length of time that the driverless cars development has been going on.
Yeah.
Because I think was it the 60s that you said it started? It's something
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
people were talking about it kind of end of the 1930s at the World's Fair. There was these ideas kind of put around, having cables in the road to keep cars in place and stuff. So obviously
Yes.
much more basic than what we're talking about now. But we have really, ever since we kind of had cars, we've really wanted to stop driving them, which I think is really funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, there is a good safety reason for it as well.
Yeah.
Who was that? Who was that guy in the World Fair who did a lot of the futuristic stuff? Oh God, I've forgotten his name. Anyway, this story will be of no use whatsoever unless I can remember his name, because he also designed the Mark One. You remember the Harvard Mark One, very early computer. Basically made by IBM, and so Thomas Watson Senior commissioned this guy, Geddes.
Oh, Norman Bell Geddes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so he was a very futuristic. If you remember those teardrop caravan designs, he designed those as well. So he was very futuristic, very kind of interesting guy. But anyway,
Is this from a future book from Mr. Tim? No.
it is. But John, we're not going into that right now.
Okay.
But yeah, he commissioned the front plate for the Harvard Mark One, which made it look like a futuristic computer, even though it's actually made out of relays rather than anything fancy like valves. Anyway, moving quickly on. So I also saw that you interviewed someone with the best name of everyone, and who? Well, do you know who I'm going to say of your interview is? Astro Teller.
Oh, I mean, yes. So he's the guy one of the co-founders, I think, of like Google X Labs. That is his name, in that is the name he has chosen for himself.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes. Like, I don't think his mother named him Astro.
So he's actually called Bob Mildew or something.
I did look it up at one point, but if the dude wants to be called Astro, he can be called Astro. Like, it's up to him.
Yeah.
I mean, we call you Tim, so I don't know what your real name is.
Exactly. It could be anything.
Mary.
So, what was his? That's my mother's middle name. So there you go. Fun facts here. Actually, no, don't get me down there. That's not quite right. Anyway, moving quickly on. What is his job, Astro Teller?
So Google's X Labs, I think they just call it X Labs now, does the moon shots. So it's coming up
Yeah.
with all the kind of wild and silly tech ideas that are. The idea is to come up with something that will have massive impact and like genuine, like change the world. They're looking for world-changing things, not like little iterative things to make, I don't know, something more efficient or whatever. So
Not
they're
like
like
your
the ones that,
Chromecast.
yeah, right. I like Chromecasts. Anyway, like the balloon, internet by balloon and things like that. So yeah, he was really interesting to talk to because he has lots of good stories and doesn't mind talking about failures and stuff like that, because their idea is if a technology fails, you probably learned a bunch of stuff along the way, and not just that balloon internet is silly, but they learned good ways of connecting two things that are very far apart and moving and giving them a connection between the two of them, which has come in handy in other ways. That kind of idea.
There is actually a company still working on internet via balloon.
Well, good luck to them.
Yeah, they're about to deploy in Africa, I think.
Neat.
Okay. Yeah, so it's still, hopefully, some of those learnings will be shared as well. So I was also just wondering, did he kind of, from the interview, did you learn something about Google that you didn't know before, or was it all kind of?
Not really. I think we've all been covering Google for such a long time that they don't really surprise you all that much. I mean, the issue that I've always had with all of this type of technology development is it costs so much money, and you have all these incredibly intelligent people and they're spending their time making driverless cars or making balloon internet. And then we have these extremely big real life problems like, poverty and climate change and feeding everyone and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't get the same money. Like if we took all the money that has been spent on driverless cars, which is, probably in the hundreds of billions at this point, like just in the last kind of 20 years with the AI style ones, that would probably have gone a long way to helping us develop carbon capture if it's truly possible. And that I think would be a little bit cooler than a car that can drive itself around some bits of San Francisco.
But you did say in the book that they've moved more towards the climate change with their research recently.
Yeah, that's what they told me last year when I talked to them, but I haven't seen any like massive disruptive, amazing innovations that have come out of it. And maybe that's just because they haven't got there yet. But at least it's something that they are spending more money on, at least at X Labs. But that is not Alphabet more widely.
Well, I did see a story earlier this week actually about the some work that had come out of the Google Labs about traffic light control.
Yeah.
Were you laughing? But don't you think that's worthwhile?
Funny. Do you want Google controlling your traffic lights? I don't.
They'll discontinue them. It'll be a pile up after
Right?
they all stop working after
Exactly.
2032.
I don't know if I can pay £5 a month and it'll always be green. I'm in for this.
Okay.
Quick,
All right.
run.
The police are coming. Okay. So what do you think was of all the things that you probably look back at the 20th century really well in terms of what came out of it? I'm just wondering what caught your eye as like one of the greatest actually inventions of the 20th century. What did we actually achieve?
I wasn't looking at things we achieved. I was looking at things we didn't. Tim, have you met me? I'm a cynic.
I'm trying to find the positives here, Nicole.
No, I think like lots of stuff is really great. Like just the ubiquity of computing and connectivity and like what that allows us to do, in terms of having access to all of this stuff and making services cheaper and better and all of that is great. It's fairly boring, like day-to-day life. Great, I can send an email. But remember when you couldn't send an email? It sucked. You'd have to mail things to people. You had to deal with paperwork. It's terrible.
Well, you say that, but there are many positives because at least you had what arrived in the Morning Post you could deal with, as opposed to this constant flow of highly annoying emails that I can't
Only
receive.
because you try to maintain inbox zero, Tim.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
I've abandoned that.
Good.
So I've moved on. Does anybody keep inbox zero successfully forever? I think it's one of those impossible dreams.
I don't know why you would spend the time doing it, because the vast majority of emails you can see from the subject line that you don't need to do anything with them. So cumulatively, you're just going to waste hours, days, weeks of your life moving things you're never going to read from one not going to read box to another not going to read box.
But isn't AI going to fix all of this for us? I'm sure someone claimed that.
Yeah, so
Nicole?
AI is going to read your email for you. It's going to tell you what's important, and then it's going to generate a response for you, and then you can tell it to hit send. Oh, we'll keep a human in the loop, and you hit send, right? And then the person who you're sending it to is going to have their AI read it, and they'll write a response, and the machines will just talk to each other forever, and we'll go back to writing letters. It'll be great.
I feel sure I read a science fiction story in the 80s about a romance that was carried on entirely in this way.
If you remember on the
Sounds
podcast
nice.
a few weeks ago, we talked about the social media platform Butterflies, which was purely AI generated characters, which I set up. You remember I was the rather buxom looking lady that was having a thing with John, who was the horse stallion man. And this is.
This is why I don't come on this podcast,
No,
guys.
absolutely. And this was what, 2 months ago? And I only flashed up the app the other day because I forgot it was on my phone. And this whole conversation has been going on, and my Butterfly AI has been talking to other AIs, and this whole thing is happening, and nothing to do with me at all. It's so it's already happening in some stupid way.
Yeah, I have an ongoing LinkedIn conversation with my husband where we just answer with the automated AI things. You just hit, hi, how are you? And then it just pops something up. And every 2 weeks, I just hit it in return.
It's cool.
Why talk to each other?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is the future. All right, so Nicole, just to end on the section where we're talking about the book, because we are going to keep you on for a little bit longer, whether you like it or not.
I got nothing to do. It's fine.
Don't say that, because they will bring you on every single week, and you will regret that kind of comment. Do you feel more optimistic about technology? I know, because I know you describe yourself as a cynic, but now that you've written this, do you feel more optimistic?
So it depends what you mean by technology. So like the technologies they're using are amazing. Like AI is great. It's just what people promise it's going to be able to do and what the business models are going to do and that sort of thing. Like if we took everything that driverless, like the Waymo driverless cars could do and just put it in all new cars as like safety features, that would be amazing. Like the actual engineering and technology is brilliant. It's just how it's going to be used and how we're going to pay for it and all of that. That's the problem. Like, ARs, you were talking, John, about the Apple headset when we were setting up and stuff. It's super cool, but does anybody want one aside from John? Like, I don't. It doesn't mean it's
God.
not amazing technology.
Don't start John. don't make John angry. Don't get John on this horse. All right. Okay. So I'll be punished if I don't ask you this question, Nicole. What's next? What is your next project?
I'm gonna have lunch.
Any more books on the horizon? Let me be more precise.
I have pitched one.
Yeah.
And it is not really about technology, sort of tangentially about technology, but if I sell it, I'll come on and tell you all about it, okay?
Okay, it's a deal. Okay, all right. And maybe even we can persuade you to come back on anyway, just occasionally, when you get a
probably.
bit bored. All right, so Nicole, in fact, the next story on the podcast is with you. It's that one about the British cancelling the AI project.
Yeah, so last year when we still had the Tories around, they promised a bunch of AI people that they would give them 1.3 billion pounds, which is a lot of money. And 800 million of that was going to go to the University of Edinburgh. And they were going to build a very, very large supercomputer that is being called an exascale one, which just means it's real darn big. And so the University of Edinburgh started working on it because that's what you do. And they've already spent 30 million. And now the money is apparently not there anymore. And possibly wasn't there, but that's getting into politics.
Getting dangerously close to politics there.
Yeah. So that's all very sad.
Yeah, well, is it sad? I mean, do you think that it's a mistake not to invest this huge amount of money?
I think it's a mistake to tell a university to start spending money and then to not actually set the money aside. So whose mistake it is aside, we do need to fund these things if we want to have them. But if we don't have money, that's going to be very hard to do. So, yeah.
So why do we need one? Do we need to have a supercomputers in the UK?
I mean, probably. If we're going to do all of this leading in AI stuff that we all promise everyone were going to do, it would probably be a good idea. It's nice to be able to counter the US a little bit. Do we need an 800 million pound one? Could we maybe have like 200 million pound ones? I don't know. You'd have to ask the people who were going to use it, like what this would actually enable beyond. I don't know. Like maybe we could have like the fifth best one or something like that.
Or you could be really
Yeah.
cynical here and say this whole market is in deep trouble at the moment because the investors are saying, where is the return on investment for these? I was reading Microsoft is spending, is it $20 billion a quarter on AI hardware at the moment? I mean, it's monstrous amounts of money. And at some point, the investors are going to turn around and say, where's my cash? And if that doesn't work, this thing may well quite dramatically implode. And there could be an awful lot of, do you want a cheap AI cluster, mate? I've got one in my lockup. And, because the hardware will still do what the hardware does. And maybe we can buy one really on the cheap in about, 18 months' time. Who knows? I am not an investor.
I was wondering, I don't know how this kind of technology scales. I mean, it seems to me that probably the worst of all possible worlds in terms of outcome and energy efficiency, because we know AI is an absolute killer for consuming power, is if every university has its own mid-tier AI system, all working simultaneously, all recreating the wheel over and over again, and burning through terawatts of power to get the similar results. This does seem like a perfect opportunity for for international or supranational cooperation, and just having a couple of competing or parallel research projects. I mean, Kultragaskis on Discord says, we need to have a decentralized global system. So I don't know how plausible that is, given the very, very high bandwidth and power requirements of AI. But at the very least, I would say, I mean, it was very easy for the previous Prime Minister, I think, to just sort of say, we're going to be a leading power in AI. Any Prime Minister would probably, want to say that just as a bit of boosterism. But actually, is it a smart thing, either nationally or globally, to be shooting for?
I think behind the scenes of this story, though, is who has paid some money. Because, as Nicole said, 30 million has already been spent on Edinburgh, which is basically just the building to house this computer. So basically they've spent 30 million on a shed. And the other part of the bit, the bit that's been pulled was 500 million, which was for the AI research resource, which, if you do a little bit of digging, and I've only done a little bit of digging, has basically the people behind the supercomputer which is now come online at Cambridge and the one that's come online at Bristol. And the Edinburgh one was meant to be the third one in this sort of cluster, and there's meant to be 5. So someone has funded those, but they're also in a partnership with Dell, Intel, and some other people. So though the money wasn't allocated for this, someone spent something somewhere. So who's picking up the tab for that? So it's all a bit murky at the moment. And the guy that Labour have tasked with sorting this out is the same guy that the Tories tasked with sorting this out. He was the guy that headed up their AI safety strategy. So, yeah, I think this story is a little underwhelming, but I think there's more to it, and it may come out in time.
Sorry, what do you mean by underwhelming, Lee?
Well, the story is basically we've got no money to build some things. But if you dig around, it's actually things have been built, but no one... But who's paying? Are we paying? Is the taxpayer paying? Is this on some horrific PFI style deal? So our ancestors are going to be paying for it for the next 7 billion years. And as we said, are we going to need this sorts of power? As Nicole also mentioned, we've got 2 supercomputers. Did we need this third? But if we didn't need this third, why have we thrown 30 million at a shed? So.
There are other supercomputers as well in the UK. There's something at the Hartree Centre. I know that they're developing a supercomputer as well. But that's it in terms of the money. That a lot of that money is coming from Lenovo. So it does seem sensible for this kind of one where you do buddy up with a company rather than just trying to do it all on your own.
Yeah,
and that's certainly also the classical model of how to pay for these things.
Yeah. Devil in the detail. Yeah, no, I agree completely, but trying to find out, how much the public is paying for this. And there's also a big, just what we were saying earlier about John was saying about investors getting twitchy, it's made very clear that these supercomputers are purely for academics, researchers, and professional peoples, not for getting Copilot to design you a birthday card. So this is serious sort of stuff, not the stuff that is being rammed down our throat at every possibility. But
so just to sorry, go on, Lee.
No. I'm finished waffling. Carry on.
Okay. No, I was only going to say that actually, in a funny kind of way, it does go back to exactly the conversation we were having earlier about the Mark One. Well, I was having the conversation anyway myself, and that was paid for by IBM. It cost $250,000 roughly back in the mid 1940s. And they then donated it to the university. But that was not for commercial reasons. Again, that was purely for academic. So it just seems like we've been doing this for 80 years. It feels like we should by now have honed down what the business model or not business model is. Darian, you're looking very quizzical. Go on.
I am. I think this is. I mean, I get what I think you're getting at fundamentally, but I think the distinction between academic and business purposes when it comes to this sort of cutting edge research is nowhere near as clean as one might imagine. I mean, every one of the big mega tech companies is investing massively in academic research, and many of the big universities are researching things which have commercial applications, and it makes perfect sense to seek. I mean, you go to any STEM faculty, there will be enormous amounts of funding coming in from industry that is looking for. They might be looking for actionable, saleable things, but also it's just in everybody's interest. It's in their interest to move on the general state of technology. And I think the fact that this particular supercomputer was supposed to be at a university doesn't really tell you anything about whether it was going to be ultimately responsible for only protein folding or whatever, or whether it was going to be entirely used for next generation Clippy.
Yeah, but I think John made a good point with you look at how much all of the big companies are spending on AI, and their investors are getting nervous about it because it's huge sums of money. Like Microsoft is spending, you said 20 billion a quarter right now, give or take, and we can't find $1 billion over multiple years to spend on this. Like just the imbalance, like how are academics and how is the non-Silicon Valley side of the tech world supposed to even remotely keep up with this if we can't even build one computer?
Could it be though that if you were able to build this AI supercomputer in Edinburgh and just get it up by its bootstraps, just get a basic system there, then you could attract more funding and more research because you'd have the foundation of it? I don't know if that was the plan in this case. It sounds like there was.
I don't think there was a plan.
No, but I mean certainly that has happened many times on many campuses.
All right. Thank you very much, Nicole. And just to plug your book again, it is called The Long History of the Future. And should people buy it, Nicole, or not?
No, they should buy multiple copies.
Right. So just not one. Okay. No. Yeah. Good answer.
Buy it for your friends.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. We hope that you will join us on a PC Pro podcast soon.
You just got to invite me, Tim.
Just put it all on me. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. See you soon.
Okay, bye. I'm going to hit the
Bye.
button. I hope I don't break everything.
I think it should work okay. Right, John, with you, what else has been going on this week?
Well, Mr. Musk, what can we say? Multiple stuff on multiple fronts, I'm afraid to say. We'll start with everyone will be aware of the deeply unpleasant stuff that's been going on of rioting and so forth in various towns. Although I believe last night it was much calmer, because if believing the newspapers and news feeds is correct, it seems large numbers of people, common, ordinary, decent chaps and chapesses, went out onto the streets to basically stop anything happening, and I absolutely take my hat off to those people for doing that. But Mr. Musk has been very public in his opinions about this, saying that we're in a police state or a two-tier police state. Or today he was saying that Kamala Harris, the running for president, that she's a communist and so forth. And I must confess, Elon Musk is an incredibly bright person. There's no question about that. And he has been leading companies that have done amazing things. To do one of those companies' worth of stuff would be amazing enough, but to do multiples is quite extraordinary. But he is coming across as a monumental carrot at the moment. I was going to say something ruder, but you know what I mean. And frankly, I wish he would stop, because if he doesn't stop soon, I could start to see shareholders wanting to remove him from some of these ownership or directorship positions and telling him to shut up. Well, he has decided that it's time that X went after the advertising industry, because clearly the advertising industry is full of horrible people who hate him. Can't imagine why, when, if you remember, it was at a presentation, I think Bob Iger was there of Disney, wasn't it? And he basically called him out in the audience and told him to something off. And this went live, so he didn't seem to be very respectful of the advertisers. But he has now decided that there is a conspiracy to not advertise on X, Twitter. I must call it Twitter. I hate calling it X. And that this is basically sort of antitrust, etc., stuff. And so he's launching a lawsuit against an organisation called the World Federation of Advertisers, which to me sounds a bit sort of Jerry Anderson again. That kind of a bit like World Police or something, doesn't it? World Space Police. But
they're definitely on an island somewhere.
Yeah, definitely, and someone's stroking a cat, and it's not Elon. But the World Federation of Advertisers is a sort of industry talking shop kind of thing, as I understand it. And the WFA has this initiative called Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And what that means is that companies who are a member of World Federation of Advertisers, which does appear to be an awful lot of the very big companies out there, they have to voluntarily agree to their code of conduct, which says that if social platforms are not matching the WFA's requirements for safety standards online, then their members should not advertise on that platform. Now, there's an awful lot of leveraging of the term should and could and would and must and not and so forth here. And I think the lawyers will undoubtedly be having a field day with this, because essentially Elon is claiming that WFA told its members that they must not advertise on X. And that turns into a conspiracy theory, etc., whereas WFA are saying it's only a set of guidelines and we can't tell our members to do anything. So one thing is absolutely certain sure, that this will roll and roll, and lots of lawyers will get very, very wealthy on the back of this. Now, it's not just actually X, because if I can bring up my my X Pro window now, which I'm trying because I'm blue ticking for a month or so. Rumble is actually very interestingly, you're shaking your head. It's actually very interesting to see what the differences are, but I don't think he's going to get my 22 quid a month moving forward, but that's another matter. Rumble, which is a streaming video platform thing, it's on NASDAQ. Don't think I've ever used it myself, but I'm sure somebody does. They have announced that they are joining in with X to sue what they call this cartel of advertisers and ad agencies, who, I'm quoting here from their tweet, Rumble has joined X to sue a cartel of advertisers and ad agencies who conspire to block ad revenue from going to certain platforms and content creators. This is a mess, and it's continuing to be a mess. Lawyers will get very wealthy, and it would appear that Mr. Musk is going to continue to come across as increasingly unhinged.
Well, do people have sympathy? Darian, do you have any sympathy with Elon Musk's position on the advertising front?
No, the man's a complete tool. I mean, he already launched a utterly ill-advised lawsuit against OpenAI not that long ago on the completely spurious grounds that he was somehow being affected, harmed by its deviating from apparently a mission that it never even contractually entered into. He has no conception of the way the real world works. He reminds me very much of, there was a particular sort of person that I knew at university, and a friend of mine very memorably said there are some people who come to this university who have incredible abilities at very specific things and absolutely no common sense. And unfortunately, in the case of Mr. Musk, he has the money to just not really care if X doesn't work. I mean, X in the sense of a variable, not his site, and not care if something he tries doesn't work. He'll just roll over and carry on throwing money, firing people, doing whatever takes his fancy. And I think he has the funding to do that for the rest of his life. So I think we just have to kind of stand by, and all we can do really is shake our heads sadly.
But that's not all. He's suing somebody else. He has opened up another lawsuit again against OpenAI. Now, he had a lawsuit going against OpenAI, which he basically walked away from in June, apparently. But he's gone back again. And if I can read the quote here, it says that the lawsuit claims that Altman and Brockman, who are the founders of OpenAI, quote, assiduously manipulated Musk into co-founding their spurious non-profit venture, unquote.
I would argue that assiduously is unnecessarily.
It's a weird word, isn't it? Are we sure he didn't mean insidiously or something?
No, it says assiduously, which I think is a very long word, so it must have come from a lawyer. So this one's going to roll and roll. It's in the United States District Court, Northern District of California, and it names I'm looking at it here, Hamilton, Brockman, OpenAI, and so forth. And so we are going to just see how this rolls as well. And he is actually suing them as Elon Musk, an individual. So this isn't on behalf of X or Tesla or one of his companies. He is personally suing them.
He's got quite a bit of money, I believe, as well, so he probably can afford to. Lee, just to hear from you on this, are you sympathetic at all to Mr. Musk in any area, or would you also like to brandish him with some sort of insult?
No, I won't brandish him with an insult, but I'm certainly not going to send him a Christmas card this year. Just going back to how John started the story about the events that have been going on in the UK, and as much as I hate to plug another podcast, it was very interesting. Last night I was listening on my walk home. I was listening to the Page 94 podcast, which is the podcast for Private Eye, who were talking about the riots and were talking about the effect of social media. And I will let you listen to it because it's in the first half of the show, and it's very, very interesting about how them as journalists have sort of waded into this. And the point they did make, particularly about Musk and particularly about X on Musk's watch, is the way that some of the igniters of some of the violence Musk let back onto the platform when Twitter had thrown them off. So, you can say, oh, this isn't social media's fault. And they were saying, well, it's clearly Musk's fault that these people are back on the platform and they continue to be on the platform and not thrown off. So that's that bit. But as far as advertisers go, advertisers do like to sort of clutch their pearls and say, oh, we don't agree with this, we're going to pull our advertising. And then if you look very carefully, they will also then very slowly throw that money back in because they realize they're losing too much market share. So for advertisers to sort of say, oh, this is horrifically wrong, and to come over all moralistic, I don't think there are many clicks down behind Mr. Musk themselves, generally speaking. But at the same time, if it frankly makes him and the three people possibly left on the board that may have any editorial decisions on the future of that platform, and if it makes any of them sit up and actually sort of find some sort of moral fibre, that can only be a good thing.
I mean, advertisers do throw their toys out the pram, and quite rightly, it's their money they're spending for their advertising. If they don't think it's worth having, they can stop advertising. But they have. I mean, we at PC Pro have been on the receiving end. I think this is probably before your time, Tim. I wrote some particularly scathing stuff about Microsoft. I think it was in the late 90s. And Microsoft, in a huge fit of pique, pulled their advertising from PC Pro for about 3 or 6 months. And I remember dear departed Felix Dennis basically telling them to go forth and multiply, because he didn't give a damn, as far as he was concerned, that there wouldn't be editorial pressure from an advertiser pulling advertising. But the question will come down to here as to whether this organisation really does control their members, or it's advisory or not, and the wording is going to get very very messy and very legal.
Right, and I'm just going to skip us along. I'm looking at the time and talk about another piece of dubious behaviour by a company. Please, Darian. I'm not talking about you. You're never dubious.
Dubious, I think, rather undersells it. This is the landmark ruling that came out on Monday that Google acted as an illegal monopoly. This was the culmination of a lengthy court case. US District Judge Amit Mehta was investigating allegations that Google was illegally basically using its enormous amounts of money to ensure that nobody else could get a look in the search market. It was accused of spending billions of dollars annually to Apple, Samsung, Mozilla and others to make certain that it would be the default standard pre-installed search engine on almost every device you can buy. And yeah, it was found guilty of antitrust violations, and the fallout is yet to be seen. So there hasn't been a sentence yet. That will come in a future hearing. Is sentence right in the context of... never mind. Possible remedies may include big fines or being required to share the information that Google has been able to harvest by being the #1 search engine with other companies. Or it's even possible, the prosecutors did float the idea of Google Search being spun off entirely into a separate company.
Haven't we heard that about 73 times already?
Well, I mean, it's what people are going to press for every time they have an opportunity to demand it. It does seem quite unlikely that will happen, certainly in the first instance. And Google has naturally said, or to be precise, Alphabet has actually said it's going to appeal. So it might be that, some more sympathetic judge concludes actually Google wasn't that bad after all. But it is kind of more on the table now than it has been at other occasions in the past.
It does seem incredible that I obviously there are a lot of legal arguments that go into this, but ultimately it does seem to be one person's judgment. Is that right, Darren, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, that's how judges work. I mean,
yeah, but you know what I mean? You've got these companies with such incredible amounts of influence over our lives, and what could happen next is not being decided by a panel of Supreme Court judges or anything like that. It's being decided by one person who...
Well, that is normal, but the judge doesn't just kind of wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I'm feeling in a bad mood. I'm going to split them up." I mean, obviously, the judge's responsibility is to draw on all sorts of existing precedent and case law and the guidance which is in the legal system, and then inevitably, Alphabet, they've already said they're going to appeal. It's going to be looked over and assessed. But at the end of the day, I would not be surprised if this goes to multiple rounds of appeal or review. And so it's not just going to be an arbitrary decision in the end. It is going to have many, many pairs of eyes passed over it.
And can we just hear a bit of a word for the defence as well? What did Google say as to why it wasn't a monopolist?
Google basically just said that although it does pay that money, that's the cost of doing business. And their argument was, I quote, I've lost the quote now, but it's basically Google is #1 because it's the best. And they characterised the ruling. They said the decision recognises that Google offers the best search engine, yet concludes we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available, with a sort of textual sniff.
Lee, what's your take on this?
Well, echoing what you said, Tim, about haven't we heard this 78,000 times before, I feel we have been here, and it's all a bit muddy. As Darian said, Google's got the legal chops to hold this in court for decades. We may never get to the end of this at all, and by the time we do, the search engine market, whatever we know it as in the future, may have moved on, and this whole thing is irrelevant anyway. But just looking at the sort of overriding features, it was about if I'm right, Darren, it was about the connection. Basically, you do a Google search. Google is sort of embedded into so many devices, so people naturally do a Google search, and that takes you back to Google, which generates revenue, and basically they've controlled it. And I was trying to think how this is different to Microsoft, because you grab any sort of Windows PC and open up Edge homepage is MSN, and they're doing the same thing, and they've even gone far now that Outlook does links straight into Edge, and they'll tell you how to change it and stuff like that. So, Google's not the only sort of person pulling this stunt, if you want to think, but they seem to be in the firing line. But behind the scenes, this story's about search, but if you look behind the scenes for website owners, Google's like a mafia boss, and unless you jump through its not particularly attractively priced hoops, the chances of your site ever being found again are absolutely zilch. So, if governments want to get excited about Google's control, search engines are tip of the iceberg. So,
Well, yeah, that's true. And there is another lawsuit actually in train right now, coming in September, where Google is being sued by the US over its exploitation of its advertising technology. But just to go back to your first point, this is something that, never mind, we've talked about Google many times. The point you raised there goes all the way back to the original Microsoft antitrust trial in the 90s over Internet Explorer, which is basically the principle, which is very, it's not a very comfortable principle. It's a bit hard to get along with, but it has been well established. Things you can do when you are small, you cannot do when you are big. It's just the difference between when you are found to be a monopoly, suddenly all sorts of activities and measures and processes, which no one would bat an eyelid at if you were a startup, because of the weight and the power that you have accumulated, they become problematic.
And what is this going to do for Google paying billions of dollars a year to Apple to make Google the default search engine?
Well, that's certainly one of the questions that's being raised. The court must hopefully be aware that if Google can no longer throw this enormous amount of cash about, that's going to have knock-on consequences. Yes, Apple receives, depending on where you read and what figures you're looking at, something like $15 to $20 billion a year from Google, which is a lot. That might not actually affect Apple's day-to-day operations very much because they are so enormous. But what many people have pointed out is there is another company, another organization, I should say, for which this might have rather more dire consequences, and that's the Mozilla Foundation, which publishes Firefox, which is now pretty much the only non-Chromium mainstream browser. And from their 2021 to 22 financial statement, which is the most recent one we have, Mozilla reported it took $593 million in revenue, of which 510 million was directly from Google. So you take that out of the equation, and that creates a very big concern.
Okay, thank you, Darian. Let us move on to nibs, and the first one is with you, Lee.
Yeah, last week we nibbed that Logitech CEO Hanneke Faber had spoken about a Forever mouse, which was the high-quality product which would have a subscription attached for vital software updates and things like that, which I know is something we always look for in our mouse purchases. Anyway, Logitech's PR team has thrown a tea towel over the budgie cage and said there are no plans for a subscription mouse. Now, the subscription mouse was mooted by Faber during the Verge's Decoder podcast. There was another comment in there where she dropped in at the possibility of Logitech discontinuing its smart home cameras. Logitech's PR has also sprung into action, again saying that's not the case either. Faber has been in the role less than a year, and it would seem that her ad hoc interview style is not going down that well.
Thank you. Darian, next nib.
Yes, well, there's good news for, well, not really anyone except Microsoft. Windows 11 is on the up and up. Last month, it passed the perhaps psychologically significant 30% market share mark, according to StatCounter, while Windows 10 dropped but to just below 65%. Obviously, this is partly, I think, people finally getting on the upgrade train because Windows 10 exits mainstream support next year. And also, there's some quite decent Windows laptops coming out nowadays, and if you buy one, you're going to get Windows 11 whether you like it or not.
Okay, and John, the final nib with you.
Final nib is December 1989 was very notable because that's when Word for Windows first shipped, and you could argue it was the first of the proper new generation GUI word processing platforms. 2 years later, December 92, is when WordStar for DOS 7.0 Rev D shipped, and that was the last version of WordStar which went back to 1978. Now, WordStar, you were definitely a WordStar or a WordPerfect person for DOS in the 1980s. I personally hated both of them, but there you go. And but Robert J. Sawyer, who is a very famous Canadian science fiction writer, has taken his most favourite thing in the entire world, which is WordStar for DOS 7.0 Rev D, on which he has done multiple books and so forth. He's packaged it all together, wrapped it up inside a DOS emulator box that you can run on Windows and other platforms, and pumped it up onto the internet for you to download and enjoy.
Thank you. I was a WordPerfect man myself, just for the sake of completion. So Lee, judging by his nods.
Yeah,
Word
5.1.
for DOS here.
Word for DOS. Darian.
Oh, and
complete?
LocusScript. We must mention LocusScript on Amstrad.
Okay. Darian.
WordStar 1512, which came with the Amstrad, what was it, PC 1512, I think, the dirt cheap PC clone for ordinary families.
Oh yes, and Gavin Hall has mentioned Lotus Ami Pro, which I did actually, which was for Windows, to be fair, but that was an excellent piece of software and very affordable. In fact, it was given away with the very first issue of PC Pro that I joined. That was issue 55, came with the full Lotus Ami suite, whatever it was called. Anyway, that's irrelevant, except to say that the current issue of PC Pro does celebrate our 30th anniversary, so you should probably buy it. There's a really good feature in there about the 30 great tech events that have happened since our launch in 1994. And basically, if you just buy one issue of PC Pro this year, I would recommend that it would be this one, because it's a great read. And by the way, in 2 months' time, I'll be recommending you buy that one, because that's the awards issue. But just ignore that for now. Buy this one. Buy two. Buy 3 issues per year. Why don't you subscribe? What are you doing? Anyway, let's move on to the hot hardware of the week, which is with you, Lee.
It is. I'm going to wave this at the camera because I know there are some people who see it. So this is the new iPad Air 11-inch M2, which we're not going to talk about because it's not hot. But what I'm hoping you'll think is hot.
Sorry, do you mean M2 or M4? If it's the new one.
No, it's the M2. This is the Air, not the Pro.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
This is the one that cost under 500 quid and not the one that cost nearly £2,000. Anyway, moving on. What is hot hardware of the week is what it's wrapped in, which is this keyboard case from Initech. This is the BK 2007. There you go, if you can see that. So for those of you that are not viewing on YouTube, it is basically a case with a keyboard attached that you slot your iPad into, and because it is a keyboard case, it wraps around the entire thing, so all 4 edges have a modicum amount of protection and covering. And this is how I prefer to have my iPad, so I have my keyboard and everything wrapped up very nicely. Now, Initech is a brand that some of you may encounter in the past. They're based in Germany and make all sorts of things, backpacks and sleeves. I've got a few of their hardware caddies for slotting drives in and out for doing clones and stuff like that. But they also do these cases. Look, I'll be honest here, there's not a lot to talk about. It's a keyboard and a case. So I'm going to throw some numbers at you and we'll get to the nitty gritty. It weighs 434 grams. There's nothing to it. It's Bluetooth. And the way it activates is it's a touch activation. So I'm going to hold it up for the camera so they can see. But basically what I'm doing is when the iPad magnetically locks to the keyboard, that's when it comes online and off we go from there. Easy peasy. It's a Mac keyboard layout with some function keys for brightness and volume and stuff like that. There's also a lock so you can lock the iPad without having to touch the button. It can also trigger the iPad's Hall sensor, which means that when you open the case, there you go, you can drop your iPad. When you open the case, it turns on, and when you shut it, it powers off. So it doesn't stay awake while you've got the case shut. So a basic feature, but it does it. It charges by USB-C, and Initech state that the keyboard has a standby time of 150 days. Now, they don't mention an average use time, but I'd be surprised if it isn't much different. The reason I know this is, swapping hardware is, this is the BK 2003. Which is my old one, which I've had for years on my old iPad 6, and I think I've probably charged it 4 times in as many years. It really just goes and goes and goes. The keyboard is 0.5 centimeter thick, and when you wrap the whole thing together, the package is 1.5 centimeters wrapped up. It's compatible with the, like I say, the new iPad Air 6s, 11-inch, some iPad Air 4 and 5s, which are the 10.9 ones. You'll get them in that's the 2022 and the 2020 ones, and some iPad Pros from a few years back. there is a nice handy loop for you to put your Apple Pencil in there, so which I like that. But they've also very cleverly left a space for you to, if you've got one of the new iPad pencils, you can mag lock it there for charging. Now, obviously, I haven't got one of the new Mac pencils because you have to buy a new one for these new iPad Airs because, stupidly, they've not made it backwards compatible. And my pencil I've had for about 10 quid for 300 years. It is a no-frills keyboard. Everything about it is adequate and satisfactory. And because of that, it's great because it doesn't have any low points. It is what you want. It's just absolutely as expected. And for those of you worried about longevity, so that BK 2007, everything that I write, that you read in PC Pro, you read in things I do for other things, has been through that keyboard at some point, and it's just nice to use. I don't give a hoot about expensive keyboards and plush feels and low action. Over 20 years of repairing laptops, you know, I've had my hands on so many keyboards. The only thing I care about is whether the keys are stuck together with jam or worse. However, I can throw my iPad in a bag and know that it's protected on all sides, and I've got a keyboard with me. So, the crux. How much is it? If you buy it from Initech Direct, and there are some chances to get discount codes from them, it's currently on sale for £37.42. They'll also sell you a used one for £24.95, and I went on this morning to Initech because shipping is a tenner from Initech, but I could buy a used one this morning with shipping and a discount code for £31.20. It is a remarkable piece of kit, and because it makes me rather sad that people think they only need to buy the Apple Magic ones to get a good iPad keyboard. And as good as the Apple stuff is, it's nearly 10 times the price of this. So anyway, I commend it to the floor. I will take some non-too technical questions.
Okay, well, a few questions have come in from people on Discord, such as, does it have a mouse built in?
Why would you need a mouse? You've got a touchscreen. Why would you need a mouse? Mrs. Grant has got, because we also got iPads at the same time because we're celebrating birthdays this year. So she got one and she's got a case that's mouse pad on, and it just makes the whole damn thing bigger. And I tried it and thought, no. So it doesn't have a touchpad because you've got a touch screen. You've got a built-in touchpad. You've got 10 of them on the end of your hands.
Touched a nerve there.
Sorry.
It sounds a bit clackety from when you're touching it, Lee. Does
30 quid, Tim. Of course it's clackety. Yeah, I mean, this is the finest plastic. I mean, recyclability, there's nothing on it. I mean, it's an eco-disaster. But yeah, it is. But I have to say, when you're, if I hold it to the mic and type, all right, that may be a bit booming. It's fine. It does. When I'm sitting on a train typing away, it doesn't bother anyone. It is perfectly fine. It's no worse, honestly. I think the nearest I can equate it to is those keyboards you get with you used to get with the old Surface machines. It's certainly no worse than that.
Yeah. And a couple of other questions come in. So presumably you bought this one because your previous keyboard was incompatible with the new iPad Air.
Yes, because it's yes. I had a refurbed iPad 6, which is 9 point something inches, I think, and this one is 11. So yeah, physically it did not fit because it's a keyboard and a case. It fits into it. It integrates. So if I pop this out, here we go. Oh, this is gold. This. There you go. So if I just pop it like that, it just sits there. So there's apertures and everything like that. Yeah, again, right. This is very low production value. Sorry, it's high quality, but you know, there's not a lot of magic going on here. There's no technical innovation or sort of magic holding it in. It is basically plastic clips.
And I see from the photo that you can put it in both portrait mode and in landscape mode. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to say that's a bit of a fudge, if I'm really honest with you. Yeah, you can because of there's a gap at the top where they've cut out so you can charge the pen. What that actually means is you can rest your iPad that way round. So yeah, you can have it portrait if you want, but it sort of takes it out of the case. And it's not locked in, so it could fall out. So yes, it's possible, but that's obviously the marketing person has gone, hey, don't forget to do it that way. We might sell 3 that way, but you wouldn't want to do it that way. You'd want it landscape, so it is secure. The idea of having this is so your iPad has got some protection.
And I see that it's got a kickstand to keep it up. And Michael Deere asks, how much can you adjust the angle of the iPad?
You can adjust the angle as much as you want. It depends how many playing cards you slot under the back. If you do a full pack, you can get it that way. But if you do, split half a pack, or maybe a bent beer mat or something like that, so you really can sort of innovate and adjust it however you want. Unlimited innovations there, Michael. None of it
All
built
right.
in.
Look, John. Look, I don't know. I can't quite read John's face. Whether John's just kind of.
I think it's horror.
John, what is your reaction? Do you have any
I,
questions?
I think this seems like spankingly good value for money. And at 30 quid, if you break it in a year, go and buy another one. I mean, the Apple keyboards, I got the new Magic Mushrooms keyboard or whatever it's called for the iPad Pro 13. And the new keyboard for that is gorgeous. But goodness me, it's a lot of money. But it is gorgeous. It has a fabulous trackpad in it. But if you've got a smaller iPad, you don't really want a touchpad because there isn't enough physical space for it. So go for one of these things. Sounds ideal.
It is much lighter as well than the Magic keyboards. So, which is something to think about, because I sometimes don't take my keyboard with me when I go on my travels, because it just makes you just notice that extra weight. Whereas this one,
You are spot on to Mrs. Grant's, as we mentioned, the one that's got the touchpad in it. It's got the sort of the metal hinge that the Magic keyboard has got, and it's 3 times the weight of this. And the idea is you want something that protects your device, but it doesn't really add to the size. That's surely that's the sweet spot we're aiming for.
okay, Dariel, unless you have something you expressly wish to say, I think it might be time for voting.
Well, I was just wondering, I don't think this is going to be a very productive line of inquiry, but are you aware of any significance to the model number? Because 2007 is just a weirdly evocative thing to call it.
Initech, if you look at their catalogue, I think they comes out of a random number generated. They might even pull letters out of a Scrabble bag. So no, it absolutely bears no resemblance. I think it's more of a skew than anything else. Don't read too much into it. I certainly haven't.
It doesn't take us back to the days of the Sarah Jane Adventures and Mad Men. It's just fair enough.
Oh no.
All right. So, who is in charge of doing the simple poll in Barry's absence? Anybody wish to step up?
I'll do it. Who is in charge, indeed? You're passive-aggressive, man.
You want passive aggressive? I'll give you passive aggressive. All right. So
That's
within
aggressive,
the studio,
aggressive, isn't it?
Yes.
within the studio, John, you sound like you're hot. Is that
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. It's a useful add-on to the mid-price iPad, which is, kind of the ones people should be buying. If they want the larger one, get the 13-inch. Oh, but that's the point, Lee. Do they do one of these keyboards for the 13-inch iPad Air?
I imagine they do. They cover the most of the range. They certainly do the previous ones. I must admit, I've not looked specifically, so
Fine,
I can't
'cause-
give you prices. But I imagine it's in there somewhere.
Okay,
If they
'cause
can
the
sell it, they'll make it.
Yeah, the 13-inch iPad Air for me is a real sweet spot because you get the big screen. I mean, it's last year's iPad Pro M2 or whatever it was, M2, just rebranded. So if they do a keyboard for that, I think that's absolutely spot on. So it's definitely a hot for me. And people who say it's not hot because it's for an Apple device, really try harder.
It's not. John. It's not hot for them because they don't have an Apple device. Why should they vote hot for something that they're not going to ever buy or
They
care to
should
buy?
recognise its hotness, its innate hotness.
Okay, we'll send postcards to John at johnhoneyball.com. All right, so that is
That sounds like inciting a hate crime there.
No, I wouldn't do such a thing. John's a hot. Darian?
Yeah, I'm a hot. I get very annoyed at the amount that Apple charges for some of its stuff, and I get that it's all, almost all good quality and all has that premium halo effect, but sometimes it is very hard to justify. So I love that there is a functional, reasonably priced alternative. 2 thumbs up.
Okay, and I'm also going to say hot. Lee, I believe you might be as well.
Yeah, hot every day of the week for all the reasons you've all said.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, that's a clear win. Well done. Lee, that extends your winning streak as opposed to my losing streak, which you very kindly informed me of the other week. All right, so just a reminder to everyone who's listening to this on the download, you can join us live every week at pcpro.link/discord to join in the chat, and we've got the PC Pro YouTube channel where you can watch us live as well and then actually physically see the hot hardware. John, why are you shaking your head?
Well, the idea of watching us.
Well,
Yeah, you do get to see the hot hardware, but you also have to watch an hour and 5 minutes of our faces. So swings and roundabouts.
yes, that is true. Okay, well, anyway, thank you very much to everyone who has joined us live on Discord, and thank you very much for downloading the podcast. Until our next one in a week's time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. So we finished. There was some discussion last week on Discord. People, I think, thought we were being very abrupt and terse in ending the conversation as soon as the meat of the podcast was over.
Oh, that sounds like Barry.
There was a
Barry,
demand for no. Well, it's me who ends the thing. But people want some post-amble. They want to feel that they're
Post-amble.
yeah.
I'm getting hassle
Oh.
on Discord.
We can do a bit of post-amble actually, because it looks like we've got a date for the live PC Pro podcast.
Oh God, you're telling them about that, are you?
I am. So it's just to mark it in your diaries if you're listening to. I have to work out how we're going to do this. I think we're only going to make it put the details on Discord. I will say to people, of course, who download, they can look at Discord, but I think that's what I'll do. But anyway, people who are listening now, they can find out that on Thursday, the 10th of October, we are planning to have an in the evening at a central London pub. Probably, I won't say it because in case it doesn't work out. But anyway, W1 somewhere. We will have a kind of 30th anniversary podcast almost. To kind of just get together and hopefully we have to iron out the details. And unfortunately, Lee can't make it. But it looks like the 5 others of us can. So that's Thursday, the 10th of October. Put it in your diary. Come and join us. John will buy you all a pint of beer and or a drink of your choosing. Probably with a shot as well, knowing John. Yeah.
It
There you
being
go.
a
How's
pub,
that for a post-amble?
it being a pub, there's a possibility that Nicole might schlep along as well.
Oh yes, that's a really good point. That's a really good
She
point.
can give away some copies of her book.
Giveaway. That's not how you get rich. That's not how you rake in the Kobie bucks.
Yeah, no, you could do a book signing.
She could sign my copy.
Be warned, she gets quite abusive after a few drinks, so you might prefer yours to be uninscribed. But
So please come along to watch the PC Pro podcast people fight. Bring your own gum shield.
Yeah, go on tour. It would be. I would quite like to travel, but I just don't think it's really feasible.
well, I mean, we don't travel to record the regular podcast, so
No, that is
I'm
true.
trying to work out where this mythical studio is.
Which studio?
The PC Pro podcast studio.
do you mean this virtual one?
Yeah, that's my point. He talks about here in the studio, and it's like, well, we don't have
It's a
one.
virtual. Put on your Vision Pro, and then you'll have the appropriate surroundings.
Then I could watch a film, and that would be much better.
Oh, do we have that option? Can we just
I
follow
could
the
put
movie?
you there, I could put the podcast there, and you could have my 3D generated avatar.
It's the dream. All right.
All right, Discord lot, are you happy? Is this what you wanted?
Is this enough? Are we
go and get some
done?
lunch.
Can I
Yes,
go
I've
and
got
refill my
I'm going to
bucket
go
of
and do some
coffee?
parenting. It's the holidays.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
right.
We'll see you next week.
Bye for
Au
now.
revoir.